Welcome back to Development Book Club. Today we'll continue with Facing Codependence, and we will talk about the nature of a child, how the child works in a functional and a dysfunctional family. Melody identifies 5 characteristics of any child, and if we were to make an acronym for them, which she doesn't, it could be VIVID, V-I-V-I-D. The first V would stand for valuable. Simply for being born. Children absorb esteem from their parents. In a functional family, power can be shared, which is to say something like, I hear you saying that you don't want to go to bed, and it's okay to not want to do it. Here are some different ways that you can choose to get to bed, and you may use any one you want. So this reaffirms their experience and their wants, saying that they're okay, while at the same time not giving them total control to do whatever they want. So VI, imperfect. Children make mistakes all the time as they learn and grow, obviously. In a functional family, the members know that everybody is imperfect, actually. And to be human is to be imperfect. In a functional family, as the parents fail, and this failure affects one or more of the children in an adverse way, parents make amends to the children, modeling good behavior. Kids are taught not to follow the rules and what to do if they don't, but who they are is not attacked when they break the rules. And the message is, despite their imperfect behavior, they are wonderful, precious people. The issue of their worth is never brought up for debate at all. The second V is vulnerable, which is to say that children are born without developed boundary systems, obviously, and have to rely on their parents to protect them. They need protection from caregivers in a physical, sexual, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual way. One of the marks of a functional family is that the children are protected, not overprotected or underprotected. They learn to be sensitive and appropriate when sharing their reality, and that just as they have the right to their reality protected, so does everybody else as well. So it's kind of like giving them lanes to stay in. Whereas like we're not driving off a cliff, but there's wiggle room to be safe. So that is V-I-V-I. The next I is immature. Functional families recognize age-appropriate behaviors in their kids. When a child behaves in a way that is below their age level, the parents functionally assist the child back into acting their own age. When a tantrum arises, parents could inquire, for example, like, tell me what's going on with you, versus yelling and screaming about why are you doing this. So V-I-V-I-D, and then D stands for dependence. Functional dependency, for example, and with their needs, like clothing, food, medical care, shelter, physical nurturing, and then emotional nurturing, which is like time and attention from others so that kids know that they matter and they can feel heard. Sexual information and guidance, for example, to develop sexually in a moderate way without being inordinately shamed by anyone. Financial information and guidance, including, like they could be kids at the right time, could be included in vacation spending planning. Okay, kids, we're going for a week and we have this much money. Let's take a look at how we can spend that. Having a checking account at the appropriate time, educational and spiritual information and guidance as well. So 2 things happen here with respect to kids being naturally dependent in a functional family. The adults are able to identify their own needs and wants. They also know when a legitimate need or want that can't be taken care of by themselves comes up. And they ask other safe people to help them meet that need or want of their child. This mutual meeting of needs or wants is called interdependence versus codependence or antidependence. So the 5 characteristics again: valuable, imperfect, vulnerable, immature, and dependent. And that's sort of how they can be responded to in a functional family. The next chapter, which we will cover now in the video, is the precious child, she calls their characteristics in a dysfunctional family, what that looks like. So the effects of dysfunctional parenting on the natural characteristics of a child. There's a great chart in the book And there's an idea that there are these natural characteristics, the 5 vivid. When they are abused, they become a dysfunctional survival trait, the kid's reaction to them, that become, in adulthood, the core symptoms of independence. So for example, that looks like this. The natural characteristic of a child being valuable, and then when that is abused, that they receive the message that they are not valuable, that comes to the dysfunctional survival trait we talked about of being less than or better than. And then in adulthood, that manifests itself with difficulty experiencing appropriate levels of esteem, self-esteem, which we talked about. In terms of vulnerability, when that becomes a dysfunctional survival trait, they will be either too vulnerable or invulnerable. This is a problem with boundaries, which is difficulty setting functional boundaries. If the child's nature as imperfect is dysfunctionally treated, the idea here is that they become bad, rebellious, or good, perfect. One of the two. So there's kind of 2 poles for each of these, depending on which way the child takes it. And she doesn't really talk too much about why this or that, just that either sort of pole ends up happening. In terms of bad or good, rebellious kids or perfect kids, there's difficulty owning and expressing one's own reality and imperfection. The idea of dependent needing, if that's not dealt with properly, is that kids become too dependent or anti-dependent, which is like needless or wantless. And they have difficulty taking care of their own wants and needs as adults. The immaturity piece, they will become either extremely immature or over-mature. And this is the idea of difficulty expressing and experiencing one's own reality moderately. Let's talk a little bit more about each of the 5 vivid things real quick. So in terms of the child being valuable, Pia mentions that a child that we spoke of earlier who does the parenting and thus feels better than in adulthood, so a child that has to take on responsibilities that aren't theirs. That's not the only way that kids can operate from a better than. Some kids are actually treated as if they are actually more valuable than others by their parents. They receive that message directly. They're placed on a pedestal. Their imperfections, which do exist, are minimized or ignored, and they are not taught that everyone has equal value. So these children do not experience any low self-worth that they must disguise by acting arrogant. They truly believe that they actually are better because they receive this message early and often. This is an empowering form of abuse. It's very hard to treat, she says, and can lead to disastrous personal relationships. In terms of them being imperfect, in children, there's an age appropriateness to behaviors, such as being clumsy and spilling milk, breaking things, right? Often when children are punished for these types of imperfections as adults, they're unable to say why they were beaten or punished. So when they talk about why were you hit, they're unable to even identify that. Also as adults, these people tend to become perfectionists who are also very controlling. So that's valuable, imperfect. Let's talk about vulnerability. When children's vulnerability is exposed to a dysfunctional family, they grow up with whatever dysfunctional boundary systems that the parents have. So that can be either non-existent or damaged boundaries, or walls, meaning like just cutting people off. Or if one parent, sometimes unfortunately people have one parent with each, they can swing back and forth between the poles, between being too vulnerable and invulnerable in adulthood. Next I is immature. Immaturity in dysfunctional homes becomes chaotic and controlling in adulthood. This comes from being expected to be too mature at an early age, responsible for their own siblings, say parenting siblings and stuff, or not being expected to grow up. This is like kids having temper tantrums at age 8. And the D is for dependency. There are 3 dysfunctional responses to a child's natural dependency. Number 1, so the parent takes care of everything, not allowing the child to learn. And these kids expect others to take care of them as adults because that's what they were modeled as children. Number 2, parents attack them, and the kids learn that it is unsafe to express a natural need or want. I'll just have to do it myself is the thought that they would have. And number 3, the parents can practically ignore all the needs and wants of a child. Instead of learning how to make a sandwich, for example, they will actually become numb to the awareness of their own hunger as adults. those two chapters are a summary of the nature of the child and adults, really, but more so the children. Again, vivid, it could be a metaphor or the acronym there. So they are born valuable, they are born imperfect, they are born vulnerable, they are born immature, and they are born dependent. See you next time.